And now, I'm delighted to present today's program. Yes, there are many women architects in San Diego, from early pioneers like Lilian Rice, Jane Minshall, Harriet Wimmer, Hazel Wood Waterman, and horticulturist Kate Sessions. You'll see them on our pop quiz there. San Diego has always had a growing number of women architects and design professionals. For years, women had worked behind the scenes in a male profession and received little recognition. Today, women have broken the glass ceilings and become a powerful force. They number 30 to 50% of graduates and have diversified their expertise in many fields: commercial, construction, land use and planning, interior design, civic buildings. Women bring a different mindset to the table, a willingness to collaborate in a team effort. Some own their own firms and are principals of firms and have won awards for outstanding projects. Many have had to learn to balance work and a family, difficult task. I'm delighted to introduce our moderator, Michele Hottel. I first met Michele, her husband, and her two little ones. That's when she only had two. When my son, Andy, invited them for a ride on San Diego Bay on his father's steamboat. Michele and Andy were classmates at Cal Poly Pomona and spent a year traveling around Europe during their Denmark year. Years have passed, and our paths have crossed several times. Today is one of them. Michele has been drawing since she was very young. Before and after attending Cal Poly Pomona and the University of Copenhagen, she began a career in architecture and design, working in various firms in Southern California. She has been practicing architecture with her own firms since 1994 and is licensed in California and Arizona, a past board member of AIA CRAN, that's Custom Residential Architects Network, and AIA San Diego, a commissioner and subject expert for the California Architects Board, and a City of La Mesa Planning Commission for 12 years. She stays active in the field of architecture, design, and art in the profession and community. One can read her blog, and that's where we got the title, "I Never Met a Woman Architect Before," the trials and tribulations of being a woman architect and mother, and her podcast and blog with guests who are architects and others in the AEC industry. Now I give you Michele.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Hi, and welcome to the Power of Women in Architecture. I'm honored and excited to be moderating the discussion with these powerful women architects in San Diego. Our panelists today are Margit Whitlock, AIA, is Principal of Architectural Concepts Incorporated in San Diego, California. She is responsible for creating the concepts that drive the creative process. Her professional experience includes all aspects of architecture and interior design. She's a licensed architect in the states of California, Arizona, New York, Hawaii, Texas, South Carolina, and Florida. For the past 30 plus years, she has focused, pardon me?
That's amazing. What did you say?
I'm glad I can recognize all of the abbreviations for that. For the past 30 plus years, she has focused on resort hospitality design and construction with projects nationally and internationally. Welcome, Margit. Elizabeth Carmichael, AIA, is Chief Design and Development Officer at the Lab San Diego. Elizabeth is a California licensed architect and sustainability visionary with over 30 years of experience in architecture, planning, and complex entitlements. As a Chief Design and Development Officer of the Lab San Diego, or the Lab SD, Living, Adaptive, Build, Sustainable Development. She leads innovative projects that prioritize biophilic principles, wellness-driven design, and long-term climate resilience. Throughout her career, she has spearheaded a diverse portfolio of multifamily housing, boutique commercial projects, medical clinics, and affordable developments. A dedicated advocate for sustainable policy and industry leadership, Elizabeth currently serves on the board of directors for USGBC California. Welcome, Liz. Kristi Byers, AIA, is a senior principal at Architects Mosher Drew, a 38-person architecture firm that has been serving San Diego for over 77 years. Her design eye, technical expertise, and conscientious building leadership skills have been honed over the 27 years of project and community leadership experience throughout Southern California and the U.S. As one of San Diego's most esteemed design thought leaders, Kristi currently serves as chair of the City of San Diego Historical Resources Board and has served on the AIA San Diego chapter's board of directors. She was also the president. Welcome, Kristi. So we're going to start off with the panel original stories and presentations, and Margit is first.
Are we gonna dim the lights a little bit?
Yeah.
Because I have some white text.
That's better.
Good, okay. Hi, I'm Margit. A lot of people don't know this about me. I don't know, can you hear me without the mic?
No.
Okay, hold on. Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Yes, okay, all right, here we go. So, a lot of people don't know this about me because, probably I don't look like a country girl, but I was born on a dairy farm. My grandpa had a dairy farm in Sacramento, California. And, probably those first 5 years of living, with my grandparents and being on the ranch, I don't know what it did. I kind of coming back to my roots. I really love gardening and being in the dirt. But anyway, here's mom and dad. So I just wanted to share that they're very supportive parents, and they really did, form who I am. I gotta give them credit a lot. Because they had a motto, sorry, it's a little blurry, but they had a motto, move forward, keep going, you're on your way. And they tried to expose me to all different kinds of culture, art, science, dirt, milk, town milking, you name it. We did all kinds of fishing, my dad took me fishing, we had rock mines and all kinds of crazy stuff. Hi. Yeah, that's me. The little diva following her mommy's footsteps. I really enjoyed dance as a child. I started out with ballet and tap and jazz, and went on into the dance team at school, and we were state champions, and we were all very, very proud. And 5 of those girls that are up there are still friends of mine. And 2 of them I talk to regularly, and 1 of them is actually coming to visit me in July. So it's, you bond with people through commonality, right? So I'm off to architecture school, and it's tough. It's rough, it's tough. I don't feel like I fit in. I'm a woman. I'm like one of, I think there were only 14 women in my graduating class. And I called my dad one day and I'm like, okay, Dad, I really want to be a chef. I think I'm going to quit architecture school and become a chef. And he said, no. No, you be an architect, that's a great cook. That's it. So keep going. Stop this nonsense. Another thing I used to do a lot is I was in theater, and taught me a lot about how to speak and be comfortable and express myself and be part of the creative process. But in life and in architecture and in business, I think I'm a little bit of theater every day, knowing clients and people and the whole scam. Doing a little bit of theater every day.
This is probably my favorite slide. This probably describes architecture at its best. It's a mixture of science and art, and in the middle of it is wonder. And if you want to be an architect, you have to be in the middle of this diagram in order to be a problem solver, think through, be creative, put your right brain and your left brain together, right? Because a lot of this text isn't showing up, I'm not sure why. So this is my slide about being fierce and fearless. Like, onward we go, right? So this tribe that I have here, this is like, I have a tribe of women, actually. I have a lot of very wonderful women friends, like the women on this panel and the women who have supported me my whole life. And this is how you have to move forward with community, right? Oh, definitely text. Oh well. Okay. Well, this was going to tell you all about all the things I did volunteer on in my whole life. So you can't read it, but anyway, motto is don't just sit in a chair. Get involved. And so I've been involved in government. I was a third grade president. I was president of my third grade. I was president of my 10th grade. I was, captain of the track team. I was, president of San Diego Architecture Foundation. I was on the board for 11 years. I was the president of the NEWH chapter here in this Network Executive Women in Hospitality here in San Diego. But you have to volunteer. You have to make a difference. Right now, my participation is at the Uptown Community Planning Group, which governs Mission Hills, Bankers Hills, Hillcrest, that whole area. And if you're not involved, you're not making a difference. So get involved. So I started my company in 1992, primarily doing high-end residential, because that's kind of where people were coming to me for. But my background was in master planning and commercial when I was at JWDA and also before that SGPA, which I started out at SGPA in '89. This project is Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. It's the Holiday Inn Vacation Club Sales Center. This is a timeshare presentation sales center. It's 30,000 square feet. We did all the architecture and the interior design. Come 2021 and everything in COVID was still kind of hot. They put the project on hold, but it's still one of my very favorite projects. Coming up with the vernacular architecture of the Southern Carolina area. We did a lot of research, a lot of context. We presented to the board. They have an architecture review board there, which was kind of interesting to fly all the way from California to make a presentation for half an hour. And that's how that goes. I love this project, and I really wish we could build someday. This is the Bola Vista Resort and Spa in Peoria, Arizona. This is a 20-acre site, 160 units clustered around a center core. The fun part about this project was this made-up story about the Spanish conquistadors coming to Arizona in search of the famous, iconic Cibola that had wealth and riches and golds and jewels. It's a completely made-up story. But we centered around the story. We had a branding company working with us. We had marketing, we had landscape architecture, we did architecture and interior design and master planning. And we came up with the story, and we stuck to the story. So, deliver on the brand is a sentence that happens all the time. Deliver on the brand. So the brand about Cibola was the mysterious. So that little road that you kind of see in the middle, that we patterned after the actual trading path of the mules and the Indians and the conquistadors as a road to the mountains. It's right behind here, it's the mountains behind Peoria. And it was covered in rubble and ruins and artifacts, and it had a kind of a kids activity where you could go and find the petroglyphs that were placed around and then could identify them. So it was really fun. We really played it up. We had this ruined wall down here on the far right. The ruined wall was built and It had partial bricks falling off of it, and so it was like a real ruin. It was a very special, very, very special project. And this is it built today. It's growing. It was built in 4 phases because you can't build 160 timeshare units because they build as they sell. So they would build 40 and then another 40 and maybe another 60 and keep on going. But this was the first building that was built. We did the interiors too, but I didn't do those pictures because they're kind of old. This was done in 2005. This is Club Regina at the Westin in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. And we engaged local artists. All of that art is original and commissioned for this project only. So we had different themes about the sea and the sun and the goddesses, like you see the one, the goddesses and the moon and the sun. So it's the whole series of art that we commissioned and then had it mass produced. So we had the originals flown to the United States and we mass produced them here. They're called G-clay, so they're prints on canvas with then hand embellished touches. All the furniture was custom made. It was interesting because we could get into this really rich color and material and kind of just bring that whole like beautiful Mexican culture into this project. Obviously, Cabo San Lucas deserved to be what it is. This is the Golden Door Spa in Fallbrook. You probably heard about that. Golden Door started out as a small wellness retreat and grew into the #1 spa in the world and most exclusive. So it had about 30 rooms, and we were hired to renovate the dining hall. So we had to learn a little bit about Japanese architecture. We did some new residential facilities there on the right, on the top right. They had this gigantic bell that they had in kind of a small little courtyard area. So we created this bell tower structure for it in the courtyard that was in a sand garden. And then we had Vichy showers. That's a Vichy shower sketch on the bottom left. Because we had renovated their spa. There's a ton of renderings for this project. The project was sold, the whole spa was sold to Blackstone Hilton. It was the largest acquisition when Blackstone bought Hilton and all the properties that ever was in hospitality in 2009, right around the time the whole market crashed. This is a project, the Ghana Beach Resort in Ghana, West Africa, and I really, really love this project because I love this soaring main lobby building. This is on the top. You can see this big, like the shapes. When you look at the African architecture and the materials, their shapes are simple. They're feminine. They're swooping. So we developed this main lobby building. The rendering on the right is kind of the inside version of that tower. And you can barely see it, but if you go to the far right of that bottom, you see these kind of what looks like book covers. And what we wanted to do there was get the different fabrics of the native weavings and wrap blocks so that you would be able to see all the different colors and patterns, and we made a wall of it as a concept. This is Silverleaf Resorts in Atlanta, Georgia. This is a sales center, like the first one talked about with Holiday Inn. This is Silverleaf. Silverleaf had 13 resorts, mostly in the Midwest and East. And this is where you go to have a presentation and hopefully signing your life away for about $20,000 or more. So we developed here this kiosk on the top left, as opposed to just this long registration boring counter that was just kind of the way it was done at that time. We wanted to have kiosks that would kind of get people away from standing, just hovering around a center table. And then like the fireplace, we stuffed it with logs and this is at their fake laws, but it was like, it was just wanted to make it more residential and cozy. And then we worked with a branding company to create the wayfinding graphics and then the large video screens, which is up there on the right. I learned a lot about technology on that loops, and that was an interactive technology back in that day. This was done in 2015, 16. So technology was really emerging, and big screens like that were costly and kind of state of the art. This is Motive Offices in San Diego. It's another one where we custom commissioned a muralist. His name is Max. He's quite getting famous now, but he spray painted, him and his crew spray painted that mural up there. And then we took the colors from that and we used colored plexiglass, cheap material, and simple, just tube steel to create this screening effect between the hallway, the workspace, and their really lobby coffee bar. They had no receptionist. You just walked in and you got yourself a cup of coffee in their office. But the colors of the inexpensive plexiglass mixed up to kind of a modern shape, but really like in the light, the skylights, I think just lights up. It's really lovely inside. Nicole Miller retail, so we've done some retail as well. Working with the owner of, not with Nicole Miller herself, but it's a franchise. So this is up in Carlsbad area, the shops, and with retail you need to have a very flexible space because everything changes on a seasonal basis and then you can change on a weekend basis. So this pink poof was like the main feature. We had that manufactured in Mexico. And it had to come in pieces to get it in the door. We've done a number of veterinarian hospitals. Probably I've worked on at least 15 or 16 veterinarian hospitals, all different kinds. Clinics, hospitals, ERs. This is West Coast. It's over in Linda Vista area. So we've done 3 projects for these people. We expanded this one, and then we did another one in Pacific Beach that just opened up. And all those pictures are the pictures of their staff's pets. So the pets, they got all the pets to come in and take pictures of them, and now they have all their pets on the walls. I really do enjoy working with veterinarians. My son's a veterinarian. They are very smart and compassionate people. And this one, this couple that is growing, it's really the way they treat their clients and the way they treat their staff and the way they treat the clients' owners, the humans. They have a very strong theory, and I really enjoy working with them. This is in construction right now. This is the Meridian Condominium downtown. We're redoing the lobby space right now and the elevators, and then next will be the Meridian Room, the guest suites, the meeting rooms, the corridors, and the elevator lobbies throughout the tower. It's a 27-story tower. These are the renderings for the lobby. Most complicated, detailed lobby in the history of any project I have ever worked on in my life. And hopefully we'll have pictures the next time we come to talk. But I love it. Look, the light fixtures, I mean, every little detail is amazing, but it's coming together. And that's me. Thank you. Yeah, let's see how you're, half the text, half. See, very good. Yes.
Hi everyone, I'm Elizabeth Carmichael. I'm the Chief Design and Development Officer and also a California licensed architect for the Lab SD.
Slides.
So this is me as a little kid with my aunt and our dog, and then that's kind of the very beginning of my architectural career there with the Crayola art caddy. So my mom claims by by her getting me this, she's the reason why I'm an architect. And then I grew up, from the age of 5 to 10, I lived on a lake in Chepachet, Rhode Island. That really, I think, because it was such a nature-based way of living, and in the winter we ice skate on the lake, in the summer we fish and swam in the lake every day. We played in the woods. So that really was what gave me a real respect for nature and a passion for biophilic design. The little country store, it's still around, and they have antiques and penny candy. So that was our favorite thing to do, was get to go to the penny candy store and pick out a little paper bag full of candy. And then I went to college. Well, I first started college in Massachusetts, but then ended up in New Orleans. And there was just very eye-opening to different styles of architecture in the antebellum South. So that's a very famous house in New Orleans called the Wedding Cake House. This is one of our projects that we have now. It's a mixed-use project, and so by using the natural materials with the siding and then providing the balconies with the planters, brings the nature to each resident. One of the old kind of, I would say, founders of biophilic design, without even intending it to be, was Hundertwasser. And he had a philosophy of putting every tree, whatever space you take up with your building, that you should replace it with green space, either on the roof or on balconies. And so I really take that to heart and try to do that on each project.
Where is that?
That one is not built yet, so that's our rendering, but it's in Carlsbad. And then this one's showing, we have a client who names all of his projects after his grandmother Pearl. And so we were really trying to bring in the concept of pearls. I have a photo of at night, I'm sure you all have seen the bikes with the lights going around at night. And so this was, we enjoyed doing that as well. So this was a photo from a little girl who was blowing bubbles with the magic of the LED lights. It was really beautiful, and so we incorporate that into a mural across the 3 buildings. Also incorporating iridescent railings to try to incorporate that pearl feeling throughout the project. And this is a mixed-use project we have in National City. That same thing, we have a large roof deck with a lot of planters, but then really want to give each resident ownership of plants right on their balcony. And this is a house that was completed in La Jolla, right on the cliffs there. This is kind of a house that has all the bells and whistles, so it was a lot of fun to work on. And then this is one of our most recent completed projects, so I do have quite a few photos of this. This is the rendering from the street. The house has a full underground basement, and we utilize passive house design to really integrate sustainability into the project. The large overhangs in the front protect the house from radiant heat from the south. And then there's kind of a grand staircase that allows the basement to bring cool air up through clear-story windows on the 3rd floor. So that was the rendering, and then this is the actual built house. So it's always nice when you have a project turn out the way you designed it. From the inside here, we have kind of the great room and kitchen. But what I wanted to tell you about was that table, that dining room table. There was 200-year-old juniper trees on the site. The owners wanted to actually move them to the rear yard because the house was going to be where they were sitting. However, talking to arborists, they really would not survive. 100-year-old trees do not like to be moved. And one was falling and actually literally had a crutch holding it up. So they were not in the condition to get relocated. So we had old-fashioned lumber harvest the trees, and then they made this magnificent dining room table that really is a centerpiece of the house. So here's another shot of it. We have the little water features in the front to bring in the sound of water to the front patios. Since the street they're on is pretty busy, and they wanted to enjoy the front patios, so that the water sound gives a little bit of a buffer to the traffic noise. And then from the rear yard, they have a pool that really butts up right to the house. And it's hard to see from this angle, but it overflows into the courtyard where the basement is. And then here's another view from the alfresco dining that's right off the kitchen. And a night view. So we have LED incorporated throughout, so they can change the colors with the seasons, but I think pretty much they keep it at blue. Maybe during Christmas they change it to red and green. And then our entry to that underground garage, which has the owner is a car enthusiast as well as an art collector. They have some beautiful sculptures and artwork throughout the house. And then we use the turf block to soften that entry so that it's not just a hard driveway. Again, bringing in biophilic design even into your entry into your garage. And then this is us just kind of being goofballs. So we were making funny faces and having fun because, we have a hard job, and so you gotta lighten it with some fun once in a while. And that's it.
Hi everyone, thank you all for coming. I'm gonna rapid fire this today. So I grew up in a small town in Arizona. When we moved there was about 12,000 people, pretty isolated. What that meant is that I got a ton of freedom. So I was growing up in the 80s, got to play outside, got to build things, played a lot with Legos. I joined our drafting class in high school. We had a very robust program. That's the Vocational Industrial Club of America Board of Directors. Those jackets were red, so that yearbook picture doesn't quite do it justice. But in the late 80s, early 90s, our instructor bought us computers, and so I learned AutoCAD before a lot of people did in the profession. So when I went to college at the University of Arizona to their 5-year program, I already had a lot of tools in my toolbox. I really blossomed in college and realized that architecture was the profession for me. I got to study abroad in Mexico City, and so at very humble beginnings in a small town that only had a couple of buildings with elevators, but then my world expanded a fair amount. So I moved out to San Diego right after college, and I worked at a firm called Mosier, Drew, Watson, Ferguson, now Architects Mosier, Drew, and also Carrier Johnson in my early career. What that meant is that I got to work on a lot of big A architecture, so big projects that for universities, civic projects, high rises. So I've collected a few projects that represent kind of pivot points in my career. So this is the Joan Kroc Center for Peace and Justice that I got to work on at Carrier Johnson. Carrier Johnson was doing a lot of high rises. When I went to school, I got out with a very sustainable design focused degree, got out into the profession and was very disappointed that architects weren't really focused on that. And then the USGBC came out, the Green Building Council came out with the LEED rating system. I adopted it very early on when a lot of senior architects were kind of patting me on the head, like, that's really cute that you're interested in this. But then what happened was clients started showing up and saying, this is really important, and then immediately I had a level of expertise that other people didn't have. So I talk a lot to young architecture students, and I say develop expertise early, and that was really able to catapult my career quite a bit. The other thing I got to learn when working at Carrier Johnson was about the public engagement process. So I got to work on the Padres Ballpark master plan as a baby architect, not the ballpark itself, but everything around, the choices about the buildings, the sidewalks, the trees, the tree grates, the historic keeping of the buildings, the retail concepts. And Gordon Carrier is an absolute master of public engagement and those meetings that got pretty dicey. And so I learned a lot being part of that process. I got licensed in 2008 and then got plucked out of Carrier Johnson by a firm out of Texas called Studio Red Architects to open up an architecture firm here in San Diego in the spring of 2008. I'm not sure if that date means anything to folks.
Yeah.
Very tough time to be opening up an architecture firm, and we were, outsiders. Even though I'd been growing up here in the architectural realm, at the time it was like a 40% unemployment rate for architects. Anyway, what that meant is that I got to work in Texas, and when they hired me, they were very interested in my sustainable design background, and Houston was going through something quite remarkable. They had a very progressive mayor who had brought on a sustainability director, and also a lot of oil companies were trying to do right by their images and saying we should embrace this LEED thing. So I got to build a sustainable design market essentially for Studio Red in Houston. So this was a memory daycare center that was a LEED Gold rated project. We got to do a lot of civic buildings. This was an event center in Beaumont, Texas, set in a brand new park. And then the city of Houston was consolidating a lot of their permitting functions in a 1908 building downtown, and we also got to do a green building resource center there, and got to play with things like green roofs, photovoltaic panels, and got LEED Gold for that one. The recession finally hit Houston, Texas. It hit oil money, and they asked me to move there. They've been trying to get me there for quite a few years. But I was president of AIA San Diego at the time. I was teaching at Woodbury University, and I didn't want to leave my people. I had some personal reasons as well. I didn't want to go. I was a surfer, not a lot of surfing in Houston, but also I really felt part of this community, and I didn't want to leave San Diego. So at the bottom of the recession, I founded an architecture firm. And my network took care of me. So my favorite architectural photographer is in the room. Studio Maha has taken a lot of these photos, but we were very busy. And a lot of that had to do with architects who I knew who had pushed work my way. We also did about 50% sustainability certifications, 50% architecture in the early days. So this was an adaptive reuse project of a bank in Escondido for Classical Academy Charter School, old bank vault. We did a lot of retail, got really good at entitlements. This is Mammoth Holistics in Mammoth Lakes. We did a fair amount of residential, and I hadn't done a lot of residential when I had been working at the other firms, but when you open a firm at the bottom of a recession, folks come to you and say, hey, we want to do a deck on our house. Do you want to do that? You say, sure. Folks come and say, we need help with our industrial coolers for the bananas we import. Can you help with that? We're like, sure, right? So we did a lot of things. This was a very important project, and that this was a Richard Wheeler house, single owner. He is a master architect in San Diego. This is in Mission Hills. It really drove my love for the various neighborhoods and historic architecture that make up San Diego. A lot of folks have really liked this house. It's been featured on the cover of a couple magazines, and it really drove me to get onto the City of San Diego Historic Resources Board, and now I'm chair of that board, and I'm enjoying serving the city in that role. We did a lot of things for different developers, a lot of some not so great, a couple con artists in there, but we didn't always get paid, but we did a lot of feasibility studies for various speculative developers, and also got into a fair amount of industrial work. So this was a fun project. We did the design guidelines for the Hermosillo Corporation for their industrial parks in northern Mexico. Then a couple of years ago, some of my mentors and friends from an architect life past approached me and said, would you have any interest in coming to work at Architects Mosier Drew? So full circle moment, that's where I started my career. I had been approached a few times before to sell my firm, merge my firm, work for other people, and I never wanted to, but the times had changed, and it was kind of a serendipitous moment, so I did. In 2023, I merged with Architects Mosier Drew. So Architects Mosier and Drew, for those that don't know, they're total badasses, right? I mean, Bob Mosier is responsible for designing the Coronado Bridge. They were instrumental in a lot of the early buildings at UCSD, SDSU. We do stuff that looks like this now. So this is before I came back to Mosier Drew, but this is an award-winning music building at Mira Mesa High School. What it has meant coming back now to a firm like Mosier Drew is I was working in the private sector when I had my own firm. I loved my clients. I had great retail, restaurant, residential clients. But now that I'm back in the big A architectural world, I get to work with nonprofits, a lot of school buildings, a lot of civic buildings. So right now, excuse me, we're doing the new master plan for the Girl Scouts of San Diego Balboa Park headquarters, tons of engagement with the girls. And so we're gonna be looking to help them 30 years into the future. It's been a real blast, the sort of project that fills up the soul. And the other thing now is that I lead other teams. So I co-lead the Architects Mosier Drew office with some other principals, and I love coming to an office now with 38 creative people. I am having a lot of fun. So thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm presenting.
Oh, okay.
Turn the lights off, Roger. Hi, I'm Michele Grace Hottel, architect. This is a project on Coronado. It's only 440 square feet. It's an actual addition remodel. Anyway, this is, I have a podcast. The first question of my podcast is, what are your first recollections of experiencing architecture? Here I am. I'm sure that one of my parents is holding on to me up here. There I am in front of the dollhouse. It was my mother's. There I am. My mom would my mom would make a lot of my clothes, and this is one of the outfits right there. But also, like my bio says, I started drawing from a very young age. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in Dormont. This is a photo of the house that I grew up in. My parents bought this house my mom was 20, my dad was 24 for $13,000. Now it's probably like $250,000. There's my brother and I who came along soon after they bought this house. Center. There I am as a Girl Scout. This photo of me is a lot cuter than the one of when I was getting my first class and had a total early 80s hairdo. Oh, sorry. This photo is cuter of me than the one of when I was getting my first class / Golden Award and I had an 80s hairdo. I then went to architecture school. We moved to California. I went to architecture school at Cal Poly Pomona with Andy. There was a slide in the center right there of the 6 of us that went to study abroad in Copenhagen together. Andy might have taken this picture of me in front of the Acropolis. But this is on the roof of our studios in Copenhagen, early morning. It was an all-nighter. We could go up on the roof. There was like a guardrail around it, and this is a photo of the towers in the background from square. That photo on the right, all 4 of us are architects. This was half of the women that we graduated with. So, that's me on the left. That's Wendy Rogers, who is now the CEO of LPA. She worked there for like 30 years. Jeanette Grand had her own firm, worked for other firms, went to, had her own firm, and then is now working for Santa Clara University like the last 10 years. Stephanie Wagstaff Becker on the right. She's doing hospitals, I think, for Turner Construction, or one of the big firms. After college, I moved to Venice Beach. I was working for a woman architect there. We did this project on the left is the first, it was 1989. We were working on a project for, it was, AIDS was a big issue. This was the first Caring for Babies with AIDS house. I wanted to be involved in more socially conscious architecture. We worked on some of the first community corporation projects in Santa Monica when they first started buying up a lot of the properties there. Now they have a huge thing. We were just doing kind of addition remodels for existing apartment buildings that they were buying up. So, and then this was in Architecture magazine in like 1990, I don't know, like 92 maybe or something like that. Yeah, 91, 92. And then I started in 1994, I got licensed and I started my own architecture firm after the birth of my first child. And so this is a project on the right. It was an addition remodel. I call it like the LA facelift project because they had built it in the 70s. I remodeled it once, then they wanted me to remodel it again to add on to the front. And then it was in the Valentine's Day movie. It's Ashton Kutcher's house where he proposes stuff that they have there on that. Then we moved back to San Diego. Here I am with my kids, two or three, oh, 3 of them. No, just 2 of them are not. And then there they are. This is one of my favorite pictures of them over there on the right. Yeah, the boys are here, not picking their noses. So we moved back to be near family. We wanted to send our kids to public schools, and so we moved back to La Mesa in '99, and then our 3rd child was born. I like to draw, like what was mentioned, and I really like the importance of sketching in architecture has been recently disputed as like an old-fashioned concept, like why draw by hand when the computer can do it for you, or AI can create images. I feel that there's a direct connection between being able to see and being able to draw it, and how your mind works with that spatial information, and the freedom of being able to design never before seen ideas because of the muscle memory that your brain has developed by drawing not only architecturally related things, but studying non-architectural sites as well. This is the Hollyhock House sketch that I did, I don't know, years ago. My late ex-husband was a docent there. This is from a, I decided one day, I had a babysitter and I said, I'm gonna go to the LACMA. They had a Charles Rennie Mackintosh exhibit. I'd actually seen his work when I studied abroad, but I went and they had these different things, and so I sketched these. And another thing about these sketches is, it's like many architects are fascinated by ruins, the decomposition and the void it leaves behind, the pieces that remain, the space that is created between these pieces. I find that in studying and drawing these shells that I can see the structure that is still holding the shell together, and in this way my architecture is about what your mind fills in when there's a gap in the evidence that is put before you, the calculations that are used to make a cantilever work, but also the fascination of what we intuit to be possibility of a design. I work with this contrast between the solid and the unexpected void in much of my work, but though it might seem to be random at times and more intuitive, the composition is not arbitrary, but decisive and beautiful. These are some architecture school projects, so you can kind of see that I've always been thinking about this deterioration or ruin. This was an addition that I did like in second year. It was an addition to the to this old house that it was on the old Kellogg house on the campus, and it's kind of Spanish style, but my thing was about like breaking down this thing, and this is the study model. The ones in the middle there was a sketch exercise that they had. It was like supposed to be kind of like a retreat, and so I had like different these kind of like different follies, kind of set up with this center part that people would meet, but then you could go out to these different structures and just stay there and kind of like, it's kind of an architect's retreat, just do kind of whatever you wanted to. The one on the right upper level, Morphosis was kind of starting. So those are drawings that I did. It was supposed to be a fast food restaurant that was on the corner of West Hollywood. So I had like this thing that was kind of breaking through the building because of a fast food restaurant and just how busy the site was. And then the bottom right is a square that this was a project that we did in Copenhagen. It was just a school project, but we had an old square, and then how would we reimagine these squares? And so kind of like the conceptual development of that is, it's kind of looking to see how people walk through the square, then creating things, and then kind of using these different elements in new ways that they already had within the city. And so this is the Sunset Cliffs house. It's an addition remodel to a mid-century modern house. I don't have any before pictures, but if you want to know, you can go on my website and see the befores. But we had obviously there was an ocean view, but the previous people had added on to the house and totally blocked off this view, and so we took down a lot of it. Right here, and then put like a moment frame system in, and then use storefront glass. This is like in 2003, and like a lot of these different window products which weren't available now then. So this is 9119 Street, and so again, this is addition remodel, and the people had an art collection, so I decided to take out the corners because they could put these large pieces on the center of the wall but still have these wall, these openings on the corners. And that house is for sale right now if anybody wants to. They're having an open house today and tomorrow. If anybody wants to go see it in person. This is 57 Port of Spain, again, it's an addition remodel, but just kind of like playing with, it's like the 70s townhouses and, breaking down some of the walls, adding new. And then just the indoor, outdoor of, these like small courtyards together and opening those up, and then all these kind of like framing these views to the water. And what would you like to say about the future of architecture? This is Ibis Street. We're probably not gonna build this project, but I did schematic design, but there's, this tiny, there's the tiny craftsman style house that up at the top, and then they wanted to add on, and so there's the, and also do an ADU. So there's like kind of more the modern part with the pool on the right side that, that opens up from the new living room that is down below, and then the garage, but then we have the ADU up there on the top. And this was done in ArchiCAD, so I guess my thing about the future is that maybe I'll it's like I'm having somebody do more of my work in ArchiCAD instead of hand drafting. I'm still hand drafting the design, but so anyway, thank you. Oh, I never turned my mic on. Yeah. Okay. Margit, historically, the architectural profession has been centered around prioritizing the traditional male architect. As a woman leading your firm, is your process different?
I don't think that the process of architecture is gender driven in my world. I think I, as a female architect, have some different processes in my brain, but I think the actual process of delivering architecture to a client is somewhat linear. You start with discovery, and then there's concepts and schematics. We all know these terms, right? Design, development, construction documents, permitting, construction, and then everything falls apart. And then, so the process is still linear, but I think some pieces around it, I think my personal way of maneuvering my thoughts with my clients who are mostly men. Trying to get over the little girl architect syndrome and have them have faith and trust in us as a team and as myself as a leader, and try to break down that gender barrier.
Well, if I could jump in, you said that you don't think architecture is necessarily gendered, right? And I don't think you can look at a building and say, oh, that was done by a female architect or that was done by a male architect. And I run into folks in the industry where they'll see these very, linear, stark, modern designs that I've done, and they'll say, well, I expected you to be curvy or be interested in pillows and that sort of thing. But so it's not gendered. But Margit, I think the way women approach design can be quite different. And I'm thinking back to when we were in Toastmasters.
Oh my God.
We were in Toastmasters together a long time ago. But one of the things I learned from you was how you nurtured your employees, because you were talking about, you were very interested in helping them on their full path in their careers. And sometimes they may end up leaving, right? That you wanted to help them fully develop and blossom into whatever sorts of professionals they were going to be, which to me feels very like a nurturing aspect to business that I don't think necessarily a lot of men would have, right? So while architecture isn't gendered, so to speak, I think that women can be better listeners, and I think can help clients get to a good result because they can really, really kind of flesh out what folks want to do with their projects. My 2 cents.
Okay, touche.
And we had a fun discussion about this the other day, but I one thing you had brought up was that a lot, historically, we think of in all pop culture, in movies and television, architects are always the guy. There's not too many women architects in movies. I had brought up about Steve McQueen in The Towering Inferno and how in that movie he went into an electrical box and knew that they had put in the wrong wires in the electrical box. It's very unrealistic, but it's funny, and I'm sure all of us, and even male architects as well, always hear when you tell someone you're an architect, there's a lot of like, oh, I wanted to be an architect too, which is great. I love that people do want to be architects, whether they pursued it or not. But it's always, I call it the George Costanza syndrome. It's funny. But I do agree. I feel like in my firm, I think nurturing employees is important. And I sometimes feel like, the crusty old architect. So I want to have the younger staff involved in design and giving their wild and crazy ideas. And then we can refine it into an actual project or into something that's feasible and buildable. But I want to hear, just out of school at least a lot sooner than I was. So I want to hear like what are their wild and crazy ideas and support them in that.
And there's also, there was a study from BYU where there was like sensitivity to your environment and what males saw in an environment as far as like going, they were showing campus paths, right? And males were just like full on just like paying attention to the path, right? And so the studies have like all of these dots, and for the men it was all about the path. The women were looking all around the path, right? Because we're more aware of our surroundings because of the violence towards women, And then also there's it seems like women are more concerned about climate change than men are, and so it's like all four of us are concerned about it. And like people say, "Oh, when did you do these huge houses?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not quite sure that like having a 10,000 square foot house in the desert with a bunch of air conditioning is exactly the right thing that people should be doing today." So it's like, yeah, I do custom residential, but they tend to be like smaller projects.
And even the ones that are large, like the project I showed you, we have solar that supports all of the electricity. We have solar water heaters that heat the pool and their own domestic water. And then again, using the passive house design to really cut down on energy. So it's like important no matter what the scale of the project, but there is also definitely something to discuss. We were talking about it before the session about like what is the appropriate size now of where people live or how do we solve the housing crisis? And does that mean everyone's living in a smaller, house or apartment?
So Kristi, there's a lot of talk about how there is a 50-50 gender balance in architecture schools currently, but the percentage of women who are licensed and who have their own firms is much lower. What is your take on this?
What is my take on this? So you showed a picture from graduation and said there were 8 folks in your class. There were 8 women in your class.
Out of 75.
Out of 70.
Yeah.
So I graduated in 1998. We had a class of 50. 12 of us were female, right? So right about 25%. I was just critting final projects at USD 2 nights ago until 10 o'clock at night, which is probably why I've lost my voice. But there was about 50% female students. But what I have seen over my 27-year career is tons of talented women who leave the profession. So my closest female architecture friends from the University of Arizona, extremely talented, all got licensed really quickly, worked for great firms. Then as they started having children, they found their way out. So they, they're now, their kids are in college, and now they're going back to do other things, either in academia or in other fields. I saw this when I was working at Carrier Johnson, right? We had 168 people, but people would kind of be on that same trajectory, and then it seemed like as soon as they were getting married and started having kids, either they were leaving the profession or their growth was truncated. So, and then at these different points in history, we've lost women from the profession, like during the recession, during COVID, certainly that happened to a lot of professions. So now working in a larger office, I think we're headed in the right direction for families. We offer a lot of flexibility, hybrid work from home. We have people coming and going at all times to be able to pick up their kids. And so I think we're headed in the right direction, but this is very much a brick and mortar profession. And so I think we've got a long way to go before you're actually going to see a 50-50 split in leadership in this profession.
Yeah, and there's the missing 32% study that was done by AIA San Francisco that kind of goes through, all of these pinch points. It's like after school, not getting licensed, starting in an office, getting married, starting a family, and how that drops off, and that those are kind of the pinch points in women's careers.
And I think COVID has changed obviously a lot of the way we work. for our office in particular, during COVID, everyone was working from home, and our staff that does have children, they work from home most of the time because trying to be, as well as we talked about how there's no school buses anymore, so you're not only you as a parent, you're a school bus driver, and having to shuffle kids, especially if they're going to different schools, you're being a taxi half the day. So it gives those people who again are very talented the opportunity to work in between what they have to do for their family. And I think overall their satisfaction is much higher too, because they're now they are there for their families, and can work late at night when they want to, or fit it around their schedule, which is much different than what we all have dealt with, where you're, at the office at 8 and lucky to leave at 5,
I'd like to
Or
add.
by midnight, sorry.
Bye.
By 5 o'clock? That's crazy.
Never happens.
Never happens.
I think that women have been able to use architecture as a jumping up point. So they have moved from getting an architecture degree and entering the firm to thinking, oh, I want to be an artist, or I want to teach, I want to write, I want to research, I want to get into fabric design, I want to be a photographer, and they take that overarching architectural degree, which studies, humanity and culture, and has used it to pop out of the traditional path of an architect, which if they're going to try to, be creative, or if they're trying to pay the bills, they might want to do something else, grab materials, development, yeah. So I don't. What we might see in numbers as 50% graduate, but only 25% practice. You need to look at what the other 25% are doing before you say they just dropped off the face of the world of architecture. Because I think that they've taken it and utilized it to create other opportunities in their life.
Well, it's kind of interesting. In 2018, one of my friends who has a big firm that has offices all over the state of California said, what do I need to do? What do we need to do in order to have, younger architects invest in the firm, right? Because you've got all of these big partners that are waiting for retirement that can't until somebody else buys in. And a lot of the younger people are not buying in. And I said, you need flexibility of schedule. Flexibility of schedule. And she said, I don't want to do that. Like, we're not going to do that. And then COVID happened, and guess what? We've got flexibility of schedule. So, Liz, as we move further into the next generation of technology, AI is being used throughout the world. How is your firm currently integrating these tools? And do you view AI as a threat to the role of the architect, or as an opportunity to focus more on the craft and vision of building?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and we're all kind of dipping our toes into AI in one way or another, or it's integrated and we don't even realize it. Our biggest way of using it is looking up code and researching state bills, and getting interpretations of code with, links to where the interpretation is coming from. It still isn't perfect, and it does, hallucinate and may give you code that does not exist. So you do have to check everything. But comparatively to what we all did, in our earlier careers, was we had giant code books on our desk that we were flipping through, material libraries. Now everything is really, at the touch of a button. So getting information on materials, getting codes, utilizing, what it does best, which is just crawling the web for answers. And it definitely saves a ton of time, so that you can concentrate more on the creative aspect. I do think there's some detriment to it, because now we do have clients who come to us with some horrible AI generated images, and that may be stuck in their head before you've even drawn a line on paper. But I don't think it's, maybe in the future it will be a threat, but I don't think so at this time. It really doesn't have, there's some programs that claim it can design a site, but then when you actually try it, it doesn't understand any of the nuances of San Diego Municipal Code, for instance, parking layouts. It doesn't understand that the width of the parking aisles that are required by City of San Diego, things of that nature. It just doesn't really have a firm grasp on yet that it can take those codes and actually interpret it into a drawing. And then I think also just, knowing space and form and materials and shadows and sunlight and winds, and it just has not gotten to that point yet. So I think for a long time, at least, our profession is protected from it.
I don't know about that. I've had a big AI week this week. So I use it a little bit. We use it at our firm in limited ways. I use it to parse really big documents. So if we get a request for proposal from the government that's 1,300 pages and I'm trying to figure out, are we well suited for this? I'll have AI analyze it and I'll ask it a few questions to figure out if we should even go for it. And then I'll read through it. But I think there's quite a few ethical concerns around AI and how we're using it. We're having a big discussion at our firm right now because certainly looking up code makes a lot of sense. Teaching young architects, you can't just use that as the answer. You need to take those links and follow it all the way through. We are responsible for the public health, safety, and welfare of our communities, and so it's really important we're still doing that due diligence. But then there is some treading along folks pushing things into AI and spitting it out and running out to a client meeting, and that is probably where we're going to draw the line, because I think once we start losing the human touch of architecture, we're in trouble, right? That we're going to start seeing a homogeneous landscape. We see that in places elsewhere. And I was critting projects a couple nights ago, so it's fresh of mind. And it's one of my coworkers, he's leading second-year students. And the project was they had to analyze something organic and the decay of that once it had heat or water or some other process applied to it. Then they had to do a case study of a famous architectural project, and then they had to complete something for a site in Liberty Station, and they got to use AI. And so you were watching these really young architects trying to solve these problems, and you're making your way through these kind of innocent drawings. And then at the end, there'd be this photorealistic image with exit signs and all the doorknobs figured out. And it felt dangerous. And one of my architects on the panel kept saying, "You guys are missing 400 steps." The thing he kept saying was, you're barely learning how to crawl, and this AI software is a marathon. So here we're seeing, this very new process where kids are just learning what to do, and then boom, there's the finished product, right? And of course, they haven't thought through everything. So I think those of us in the profession who kind of oversee firms and the integration of AI, I think we need to be really intentional about it. And I like what you said, Liz, about freeing up the space so that we're really using our creativity to solve those problems.
Yeah, and I still love, for our design charrettes when we're starting a project, we roll out, brown paper across the conference table. We have all of our markers and colored pencils, and we still want to do it with fresh ideas, not something that came from a computer, because all of us together, when we come together to discuss ideas and the problem of the project or who the occupants are, is really when we're coming up with our best ideas versus just getting a pretty picture that really doesn't mean anything.
I only use AI by asking Liz all of my No, I mean, also, right, I was like talking in the coffee place, I was talking to somebody that was getting married, picking up stuff, and then all of a sudden, my phone like shows this old photo of me getting married, dancing with my dad, and I mean, so totally bizarre, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that is AI, yeah, that's AI.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Want to open up? Okay, let's open up to the audience. Is there anyone? I have like one other question. Oh, what would you like to say about the future? of
Well, no, it looks
architecture?
like you
Yeah.
had some hands being raised
Oh,
out
okay.
there.
Yes, Roger.
What can you say about architects as developers? That's a very popular thing for men, but I haven't seen too many women doing that. So what do you know about that?
There are. It's just that, sometimes when there's a boys club, it's like the boys are talking more, and I mean, it's like all of us have been in social situations where, where we're all talking about stuff, and then at the end of the thing, so-and-so says, hey, let's go meet for a beer, on Thursday or whatever, and we're not invited to that conversation, like through whatever, right, through whatever reason, there could be many different reasons why, maybe, but, also, just about gender or, other people that are in the profession that aren't showing up like all of the typical kind of male architects, it's like, I like to think also, one of our former first ladies who said, be the voice for those who don't have one, right? And so if you know that there's an architect and it's a woman or it's another minority of the profession, it's like speak up, say, hey, I know so-and-so, right? I mean, it's like, because really, we need to promote, and we need to promote ourselves. I don't think women tend to promote other people, and that's fine when they're working for a big firm, but it's like, I think we tend to promote ourselves less than men do.
Well, and I can't think of a female or a woman architect developer, right? We have the RED program and a lot of really talented folks coming out. However, I do know a lot of female developers. So, I just toured a house in Cortez Hill that is transitional housing for very vulnerable folks, and the woman leading the presentation from the developer, you could tell it had deep meaning for her, that there was housing being provided for folks transitioning out of homelessness. I think the chair of our planning commission right now, Kelly Modan, is a developer, and I'm wondering about what you said, Margit, about women who find their way maybe from those architectural beginnings and find their way into other careers. So there are women in the development world, but now
Women contractors.
yeah, and a lot of female contractors. But Roger, now you're going to make me go research that and figure out which female architects are out there developing.
Well, I have been a junior partner on a couple of development projects myself, and I do find that, at least in my niche, most of my clients are men developers. But I have had a handful of women developer clients over the years that have been great. And then we just formed our own development company, Blue Haven, where I'm partnering with a broker, a general contractor, and a site supervisor. So we're actively looking for our first development solo project, but otherwise I've been a junior partner with some of my clients on development projects, and
Where you were doing the design as part of your buy-in.
Exactly. So it's a way to get, as an architect, it's a way to get skin in the game, and I think as far as the developer partners, they like it as well, because they know that their projects are important to you because it's part of your income stream as well.
Did you have a question in the front row? Were you going to ask a question?
Well, I guess my concern is when people are working at home, you don't have that collaboration. And so much of what you said you get ideas when you all collaborate. So is that a problem now? If you accommodate people that are working at home?
I mean, we have everyone come in for those, like the design charrettes that I was describing. We do have everyone still come in for that. We do work around their schedules to make sure everyone can participate though. But I do agree, because I feel like even as a young architect, I learned a lot by just listening to what was going around the office. I do think that people will miss out on that from working from home.
That's what I was concerned about.
Yeah.
People starting out, just kind of breathing the same air. You know, you overhear something that you wouldn't think of, and somebody says it, and you're, oh my God, that solves my problem. So.
And I think it's probably not ideal for people entering the profession, but someone with like 10, 15 years experience, I think it's a little easier for them to have, to be able to work from home.
I think that working in a team, you need to be around, eyes on the ball. So when you're working as a team, you can easily say, Kristi, do you remember that conversation? Was it black or was it white? Oh yeah, white. Thank you very much. Not like I'm going to type an email and spend 300 goddamn hours to try to get an answer when it's white, right? So in my office, I give them all the freedom in the world to kind of go, but I need them there. I need to see what we're doing. I need to know what we're doing, how we're going to get there. Are you working together? Is it efficient? You know.
It's not perfect yet, right? So when I said we're on our way, we had some big struggles in COVID. We were very prepared, bought a lot of laptops. Everybody went their separate ways, and there were folks who thrived working at home where they had a little bit more experience and they could really get through the problems. And then there were some folks that really struggled because their, home lives weren't conducive. And then we stayed really busy in COVID, and we were trying to hire up, and hiring a new person working from a distance during COVID was almost impossible. So at our office, we have 3 core days in the middle of the week where we want folks there Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for all of those discussions and that synergy. And then Mondays and Fridays are work from home optional. And we still have probably about a third of the office, quarter to a third of the office who's there. So I completely agree with what all of you are saying, right? That especially when folks are coming out of school, I'd like to have them butts in seats, taking in everything that's happening, like osmosis, like you're saying, right? But in the current climate, if you do dictate that, we will lose people because we have that lack of flexibility. So we're still trying to make it right. It's not perfect.
We need to find a happy medium.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like I started my firm in '94 after I had started working for an architect in 1983. I was still working while I was going to school, and so it's like totally different. And when I was always working at small firms, so I kind of like knew what to do, but still, I have to, my late ex-husband was an architect, right? It's like I like to socialize with architects, and so, it's like if I have a question, we refer each other projects. I've gotten referrals from all of them. I have the podcast. It's just like it's good to stay connected, even though I'm a sole proprietor. It's like I still want to stay connected, and I don't. It's like I want to. I ask people questions. If I like, hey, do you know? I ask Liz, I ask Kristi, I ask Margit. It's like, what do you think about this? What's going on here? I mean, you have to still maintain those connections, even if you're by yourself. If I would have been a young person, I would have never wanted to stay at home. No, I literally, it's like I went, I stayed at home, and I even had an office when I was in Venice. I had an office down the street, with my first kid. It was just that the rent had gone up, had doubled, and I had to, move home like in 30 days, and so it was more of like an economic thing, not like that I didn't want to be with other people. Okay, are there any other questions? Yes.
Yes. Do you have any advice for a student who's interested in developing expertise in mural architecture?
Neurosciences?
So I have on my team, Arkar, who was in the team photos, he went and, no pressure, but he got a master's in architecture and a master in neuroscience from Columbia University. So we work a lot together on how is what we're doing on our projects affecting brain wellness, affecting cortisol levels, affecting your physiological and psychological well-being. And, I do rely on him for the science backing of it. But I do think that we do all have somewhat an innate knowledge of like what makes us feel good versus what doesn't. And then having the science to back it is great. But that was the route he took. And then now we're really incorporating it into our architectural practice.
One comment, and I'm not going to get all the facts right, but so I think her name is Eve Edelstein. Is that ringing a bell? Right. Okay, Eve. And then also I know Allison Whitlock, who's an architect, worked with her, and so they have done a lot of work about neuroscience in architecture, and I feel like there's even a location or
I think it's a Salk.
it might be at.
Are they still at the new school?
I think they stopped that program, but I could be wrong. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
but there has been a lot of work around that locally by women. So it might be worth looking into that just to see where it's been, and if it has kind of petered out a little bit, bring it back.
And I know Gail Brager, who I'm on the board with, she teaches up at Berkeley and is focused on neuro. I can't even remember. There's so many terms right now, but neuroarchitecture.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.